ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Phoenix, and then it's time for another episode of WXR. Joining me for this episode of WXR are the other two corners of the X-Pound triangle from Showtime, or soon to be under a new name, Marcus Shadow.
What's up?
And of course, from the Mole Hole, and it's in sundry subsidiaries, it's Chris the Mole.
And hello.
He's apparently Simon today.
So to
Hello,
say, it's apparently
darlings.
Moldango today.
All right, well, today for WXR, we're going to be discussing a rather timely topic, given the current storylines of the WWE, and to a lesser extent TNA, I suppose, and that is factions of authority. Now, in previous podcasts, we've discussed tag teams and groups in wrestling, but this time we're specifically focusing on factions that have one or more persons in them that have control or perceived storyline control over the company, whether that might be a commissioner, a general manager, a CEO, whatever it might be.
Well, I'll say, I believe we also have for this topic of factions and authority, I believe the Fallen Angel has just joined us.
Ooh, excellent. Welcome, O Fallen One.
If he's actually there.
Fallen Angel might pop in here and there, folks.
Oh,
Maybe.
there he is.
Ah, there he is. Welcome, Fallen Angel. Okay. So, like I said, factions of authority. We're going to talk about are they good? Are they bad? Is it positive to use that sort of thing that way? Is it not? Does it hurt the company, help the company, etc., etc.? So, we're going to open this up. Of course, the reason I mentioned it's timely is, of course, the current faction known as, quite literally and directly, the Authority. Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, and to a lesser extent, Randy Orton and The Shield. And so, I guess the question being, we're seeing recently on TV the fact that the Authority storyline is kind of driving television, but it's not being used well. And it seems to be, it's more than just generating heel heat, it's generating what one might refer to as X-Pac heat. And basically, Triple H more so than Stephanie, Triple H is not liked in general because in his situation, not only is he the storyline authority figure, he's actually the authority figure. And that could be a little bit of an issue in and of itself. But fact of the matter is the storyline is not working because because of the problems in the real company under the real authority are being people are perceiving it under the storyline authority, and it's kind of hurting the entire storyline. What do you guys think about it?
Honestly, with the Triple H one, I don't think it's X-Pac heat, only because, as we saw on Raw, when he used that against Batista and Orton, the crowd cheered for him, then was shocked when at the end he turned out to be a villain again. Which, I'm going to say it's real heat because they're acting heelish.
Well, I think Triple H, showing just how talented he is, whether people like to admit that or not, turned it from X-Pac heat back into heel heat by just those actions alone. Because for several weeks in a row, especially elongated with the Daniel Bryan stuff, it was slowly turning into X-Pac heat, coupled with the fact that it caused CM Punk to walk out. You know, guys aren't getting pushed. The same guys, and the fact that the fans started hijacking shows, and basically they forced a heel turn on Batista. I mean, clearly there was a lot of just general real-life dissatisfaction with the authority of the company in general and how they were running it. So I think it was a combination of X-Pac heat that started to surface, and they realized it, and they managed to turn it around. And Triple H, with his skill on the microphone and out there in that ring, managed to turn it around back into regular heel heat just in time for WrestleMania. And I give him credit for pulling that off.
Yep. And I will say one thing. Yay, we got the Queen of Hearts.
Hello, Queen of Hearts. Welcome.
Hello. Are you recording?
We are.
Yes,
We are.
Today's topic is factions of authority, such as the Authority, etc.
Yeah. I will say as well what my opinion on them as a whole, if that makes sense, is I'm going to say it's both good and bad.
Okay.
It's good for TV because we as the audience do enjoy seeing stuff like the corporation and stuff like that. That's kind of cool. However, it's bad for the business, kind of, if that makes sense, because superstars have gone on record and stuff like that. Like, for example, they mention it during like the NWO stuff and all that. Of the second you had like Eric Bischoff say in the NWO, because that then means the guy in charge is officially in this stable. They know that stable's going to be booked well. You then have superstars being jealous of the ones in that stable, and you have superstars trying to basically politics their way up the ladder to try and get into that group so that they can essentially run the show, which makes it bad backstage because people will turn on each other over it because jealousy, politics, and stuff, they're always there in the locker room, and this just encourages it. So I'm going to go on the record as saying I think it's both good and bad, if that makes sense.
So is that how the NWO ended up with like half the roster in the faction?
The NWO ended up in half the roster in the faction because of that, and also because certain people like Hogan and stuff like that had creative control, which means they essentially were able to say, look, this guy's a friend of mine. Bring him into the NWO. And it just went fucking ridiculous. Because like, oh yeah, this guy's now in the NWO. Oh no, he want this. I invite my friend into the NWO. My friend now wants to invite his friend. It's sort of like a pyramid scheme, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's
You're in
not
the
a good
NWO.
thing.
You're in the NWO. Everyone's in the NWO.
Yeah, which it isn't a good thing. But I was saying, just in terms of the politicking and stuff to try and be on the same thing with the guy in charge, that's bad. And the other part that's bad for business as well is if you have a guy like, say, Vince McMahon come out and he's now leading, like, say, a faction of authority, and he turns around and says, oh, like Triple H did, where you hear Triple H on the air turn around and say, come on, certain guys never amounted to anything in this business, like, and he mentions, like, Jericho, who people have constantly told he has problems with anyway and tried to bury. It seems a little in poor taste.
Yeah. But then again, half the things Triple H does in general are in poor taste.
Cough, Katie Vick, cough.
Exactly.
But I don't know what if Marcus, the Queen of Hearts, or the Fallen Angel agree with that or have different thoughts because they kind of spoke a little too much. But I'll let them go.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, there's a fine line between doing something or saying something for a storyline purpose or for trying to quote be a heel unquote, and just doing something or saying something because you can. And it's like, especially when you have someone who actually is in power, quote, be in power in this stable, oftentimes you run into, like you said, them doing something because they can. And it's like, no. I don't know what Fallen Angel thinks.
Or Queen of Hearts.
And Queen of Hearts.
On the NWO specifically, or
No, just we're on about factions of authority.
factions of authority. Well, one that comes straight to mind, if I can actually remember the name of this one. Oh shit. The name.
Oh shit! I think that sums up most of them.
The McMahons and freaking Taker and all that.
Corporate ministry.
Yeah, corporate ministry. Only to see them beat down by the new CEO of WWF. Yeah, so they all sucked.
I will say the one that worked, the corporation worked. As much as, like, people know I'm not a fan of the era and stuff, doesn't matter. I'm going to look and get it more impartially. I'm going to say the corporation worked. It was Austin going against McMahon, and they spawned that into a stable that worked. Corporate ministry was a bit fucking ridiculous. Yeah. Where you just took the ministry and you said, fuck it, let's make it all about Vince and stuff, which, no, I didn't work with the corporate ministry. I didn't like that twist, but the corporation worked. The problem I feel is the corporation was really the first one to kind of do this, or one of the first ones to try and do this, because it was capitalizing on the feuds that they had going at the moment, the Austin v. McMahon thing, which hadn't really been seen. And the problem is, so many ones now, when they come back, Like the Authority v Daniel Bryan with Triple H v Daniel Bryan. It's not as good as Austin v McMahon. Or fucking like even in the NWO one, weird when they had the Bischoff and they had all the other ones. Yeah, that was different to the corporation, kind of, only because of how it was done, but it still felt like they were trying to do the same thing. And it's one of those things of they're trying to catch lightning in a bottle twice. You can't do it. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
the first one was just the perfect mixture of the right amount of mid-carders that weren't really doing much, like Big Bossman, Ken Shamrock and stuff, with the right head of the faction, Vince McMahon, who was already in a feud with the babyface Austin, and Vince couldn't wrestle, so there wasn't a need for the Austin v Vince stuff, because every time you had Austin v Vince, it was just a beatdown, which means you needed some sort of muscle behind Vince, which was the corporation. It was Vince's equalizer against Austin's brute force. However, that doesn't need to be the case with like the Authority or the McMahon Helmsley era and all these other ones. And it's like I said, it's like they're trying to capture something twice. They're trying to capture that magic twice, and it doesn't work. Or at least I don't feel it works. Don't know about everyone else.
No, I agree. And the McMahon Helmsley era was dumb the first time.
It was.
I don't know who thought it was such a good idea to try it again, but it was dumb the first time.
But what does Jim think?
Yeah, I can.
If you disagree, you can say so. I don't mind. I mean, that's part of the joy of these podcasts, is the differing opinions.
True. Well, to be perfectly honest, I missed the last thing that was said. I'll be honest with you. That's why I'm not quite sure. I heard whether it was something whether something was better the first time or not. I just missed what that was specifically.
Oh, all I'd mentioned was I thought the corporation the first time had the right amount of people in it, with the right mixture with the Austin McMahon feud, that it worked. After that, all the other ones seem to be trying to capture that magic again, and it never works. However, I don't know if you would agree or disagree with that. Because I'm like, the first one worked, the other ones, I don't like the other factions of Authority.
I could sort of agree with that. I think none of them ever got the magic the corporation did. I mean, it's one of those lightning in a bottle things. It just worked. But I think some have come closer to it than others. I think certain ones have worked in a different way that were, it seemed to work slightly differently because of either the aesthetic was slightly different or, or the situation was slightly different. And I think it worked in other ways. Not as well as the corporation, but I think, like, for example, like currently the Authority, that's forced as hell and that doesn't work. But one that comes to my mind that actually I thought really worked really well was back on SmackDown when Edge and Vicky were running La Familia. I thought that worked really well. I really liked that because you had Vicky as the GM. She was doing, changing shit around to benefit Edge and the who did they have? Who was their tag team in there? I don't remember who the hell that was.
I can't remember. It was like Edge, Big Show, Chavo, and stuff.
Yeah, it was like Edge, Big Show, Chavo. I thought it was like a tag team, but anyway.
Oh yeah, they did. It was Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins, whatever he was called.
Oh, that's right, Hawkins and Ryder, the Edgeheads. Right, that's right, the Edgeheads. But anyway, I remember like it was worked out because Vicky was in this position of power and had been for a time. So it's not like it was somebody just randomly got power and made the faction. It's Vicky had been GM for quite a while. She was already well established as a heel on TV, so it's not like she came out of nowhere to take power. Edge was an established heel on TV and knew how to use that, so you wanted to hate Edge because Edge was able to sculpt that heel heat and use it to manipulate and do shit. And the others were like the lackeys that did shit, and it worked really well. It wasn't the corporation, but because of the situation, because they were supposed to be, it was like supporting the family. It wasn't just like, oh, these are people I like. This is our family. We're supporting our family together, and the fact that it allowed them to. The fact that Vicky and Edge were just so good as heels really helped it too. And I was really like that faction. I thought that one always worked really well as a faction with an authority figure. Because had Vicky not been the GM at that time, that faction would have flopped completely. Her being the GM and being able to manipulate things for them made that faction.
Oh, I can agree with that, and it works. It's like I said, not all of them feel exactly like the corporation. Like that one didn't. Like I mentioned with the NWO, when Bischoff joined the NWO, it felt different to the corporation. And I'll admit, the corporation was better in the NWO at this point when everyone was joining, but it was done different to the corporation because it was more like, look, Bischoff's in charge. Bischoff's joined the NWO because, as Bischoff pointed out, how the fuck do you think they've got away with all these gang attacks for all these years and not had anything happen? Of course, I'm in charge of it. Of course, well, not in charge. Of course, I'm siding with them because they give me more revenue from the merchandising, which worked. I'm sorry, that kind of worked as an explanation. It made sense logically speaking, if that makes sense, but it wasn't like the corporation because it was more like Bischoff was just having fun and letting his gang do whatever the fuck they liked for money, which was cool. Whereas the corporation was more honed, if you will, or more focused. But it's like, as much as I don't know if people would agree or disagree on this, because this might not count as a faction of authority. I like it when it's a guy who's in charge, like Bischoff on Raw, when they have a team with them, but not necessarily a stable. Like, I'm sorry, 3 minute warning, fucking unbelievably awesome. Did you just say 3 minutes and then they just come out and destroy everyone? I love that. I
That was
really
great.
love that. I wish we like. Imagine if you'd had Stephanie in charge of Raw right now and she'd just done something similar of like, oh, you disagree with me? Okay, fair enough. The judgment's up to you. And then that's when Shield attacked. Well, there was no need
Yeah.
for Orton, Triple H, or vice versa. You could get rid of Stephanie and replace with Triple H. There was no need for all of these. If they were just in charge of the Shield and were just using them as hired guns, it works a lot more because
Yeah.
a faction of authority should, as someone in charge should have some sort of
Yes.
muscle behind them.
Yeah, and that would work because what they could have done is Triple H comes out about what's best for business. He could throw that out once in a while because that's just a code phrase to make people hate you. But what he could have done was talk about it's not just about what's for business, it's about justice.
Yeah, it's like the way I would have done the faction of authority. I don't know if everyone here would agree or not, since they were going to bring them back anyway. I would have done the whole Stephanie McMahon's doing this and she's using the Shield. Have Triple H come out as the face guy, since Triple H is getting some cheers and stuff. He was when he first became the corporate guy. Have him try to reason with his wife, and when that doesn't work, he's like, you know what? Okay, fair enough. This doesn't work. You're officially the authority. You've become like your dad. However, I know how to stop someone in charge. And then out comes Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, and X-Pac and reunite DX for the sole purpose of jobbing them to the Shield. Which people would hate that because it was them returning or whatever, but that's using the older guys to support the newer guys.
Right.
Having like Road Dogg, Billy Gunn, and X-Pac lose to the Shield and having Shield dominate and stuff like that. And maybe do it where Stephanie McMahon's like, okay, and if your team loses, you have to join me. And then she joins him. You could even go into the whole Shawn Michaels not wanting to work for JBL style thing with Triple H, where he's like in the ring, he's getting all the pops from the fans and they're cheering him. Yeah, he's still pedigreeing people when his wife says so.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, that'd be a lot more interesting.
Good. Can we also have Triple H hire Shawn Michaels and have his explicit purpose be to super kick little girls in the face?
We could.
Just do that once a week. That would be hilarious.
Yeah. But what do you think about my idea, Marcus?
I think you're right. I think the whole faction of authority thing just went too far. I think something simple like what you said would work far better. Because you don't need a faction of authority right now. You just need an authority figure.
Yep. Or hell, if we're going to do a faction in charge right now with who they've got available to them, they could have easily, instead of doing the faction of authority, they could have had Orton unite with Triple H, the next month bring Batista back, and then bring back Ric Flair as a mouthpiece, and just do it as Evolution's now in charge.
Mm-hmm.
That would have worked a lot more too. I would have had some sort of history there. Because the faction of authority right now, it did, like Jim said, it felt so fucking forced.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a Hail Mary. It was our ratings are tanking. Let's bring back the McMahon-Helmsley era. That'll get ratings up. That's exactly what it was. And
that shouldn't be the mindset. That'd be like
I know.
Saban going. That'd be like Saban going. You know what? Power Rangers is kind of tanking with Samurai and Super Samurai. Let's bring back Turbo.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I think that's the mindset they're kind of in. But I don't know. Factions of Authority. When you have the right people in the right set of circumstances, Factions of Authority work brilliantly. But if you have to shoehorn it in and force it, or if they get too big, then no, then that's when they fall apart and it starts to just be stupid.
I know Fallen Angel. If you're there, you might agree with this or not. I kind of wish WWE had taken this approach with the Authority as well, like how they've got them right now. Why the hell don't they do what TNA did, where they say, okay, look, it was Karen Angle or Karen Jarrett, whichever one she was fucking called. I think it was Karen Jarrett, and she's like, and they're like, look, we're gonna put her in charge of the divas. They got her to motivate the divas, and then have some diva heels join them for the sole purpose of doing the divas match. Like, you got AJ and Tamina together. If they had joined Stephanie, and you'd had Stephanie help them out, that would help out the divas division like fuck. Because then you got the guys a faction of Authority and the female one run by the same people.
That would make sense. And then you could do awesome things like have an intergender tag match where Natalia teams up with Daniel Bryan and take on AJ and Orton or something like that.
Yeah, that could work as well.
I find it kind of funny you bring that up because we kind of mentioned that when it was announced that Triple H and Steph were going to come back.
Announced what?
That they were coming back.
Yeah, I knew they were coming back. I mean, you said what when it was announced they were coming back?
I said we kind of mentioned exactly what you just mentioned of Stephanie should come back and basically take over the Divas division, try to boost that, and Triple H as superstars, because we thought that's kind of what they were going to do, and then they didn't. They just rehashed McMahon Helmsley era, and it sucked balls.
Yeah, I meant when they brought them back as heels, they could have done it easily, because I know people are like, oh, TNA, huh? But it's like TNA's got has had some great ideas, and the Karen Jarrett thing where she was in charge of the knockouts, or whatever they're called, and she was motivating them, and you had some of them like the heel ones sucking up to her and being like her entourage, if you will, while she was still going out with the main guy, going out with the superstars and stuff. It totally worked. I would love that with Stephanie McMahon and stuff, where if you'd had like a heel, because we haven't had a heel female faction of Authority on WWE much, I don't think. I don't think we've ever had it really. Closest we come is we had China in the corporation. But that's neither a team nor female. And everyone's gone quiet again.
Well, since we're talking about factions of authority here, let's see. I'm trying to think if there's any other factions of authority or other aspects of it that we should. I mean, I guess the other question is, especially in today's age of smarks and the internet, in the case of the authority, it's not the case, but in other situations, I guess the other thing that should come up, and I guess in relation to the authority now, before I go on the other thing, is the fact that do you think it works having a faction of authority when the people that come in to run the faction of authority were not necessary because there were already authority figures? Because we already had two perfectly good GMs, or at least one in Brad Maddox. I don't know what the hell happened over on SmackDown.
We had Brad Maddox, but I think Triple H, as much as I liked Brad Maddox and he was a unique one, I thought since we all knew Triple H was in charge anyway, if you're going to do it, Triple H does make sense, only because instead of it being the inevitable Austin v. McMahon matchup, which results in the heel running around trying to avoid the face and being beat down, which was just so fucking cliched and outdated after Austin v. McMahon #1, that essentially speaking, Triple H would be able to say, like, do that and then actually put on a good match with the person, or a match before anyone makes that joke. But he'd be able to put on a match with the person and have it be an actual match. which is an awesome way of building it up. Which I think the Triple H one worked. It's just I think they failed to use it to its potential.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
I agree with that. But the point I was actually making was more of the fact that, does that hurt the company when you basically bury your existing authority figures for the sake of a new one? Because you had Brad Maddox and you had either Booker T or Teddy Long. I lost track. But basically, you had these authority figures. And then, okay,
So now all black people look alike. You can't tell the difference between Theodore Long and Booker T. Racist.
I can tell the difference. I just didn't know which one was in charge because it was Booker T, then it was Teddy Long, then it was
It's
Booker
both.
T.
It's both. It was both together.
Okay. Anywho, so you had these general managers, and if Triple H just came in and said, "Okay, Stephanie and I are running things now," and just said, okay, and basically just took over and said, "We're going to run both shows now." The general managers are fired. That would have been okay. That would have worked. But the problem is they brought them in, and then they just left the general managers there to languish and didn't use them for anything. And every once in a while, Brad Maddox to do something that was counter to the authority. And okay, that was funny. They didn't commit either way. They either needed. I felt like they needed to either commit to either A, get rid of the other authority figure so that Triple H was literally the authority, which inevitably they kind of did here. And then they added Kane, which seemed unnecessary. But anyway, or if you're gonna leave Brad Maddox in there, have Brad Maddox be an underdog face. Like he's technically still the general manager, and he likes wrestlers and wants to help out. So occasionally he pops in and does something good to counter a match and help out. But the authority hates him, so he gets beat down. So he's like this underdog little guy that's in a position of authority trying to help. And say like because of his contract, Triple H can't fire him or something. That could have been a great underdog story, and you could have had Brad Maddox be the underdog authority manager that was behind Daniel Bryan and the other guys and trying to push them up. That would have been a great storyline.
That would have been great. It's like going with what you said. It would have also been great if they'd used Booker T for the same thing, because you could have made the faces like Daniel Bryan and stuff. Sort of, if you want to go Star Wars route, it could have been like they were the Rebel Alliance, if you will, led by a failed or not failed, but like fired person of authority, and someone like Booker T on the microphone who could actually be able to at least do some attacks to Triple H too and compete. That would have been awesome.
Yep, I agree. But yeah, I don't think you should bury what you have like they did with this, where it's like they just kind of phased out and kind of disappeared instead of outright saying we're taking over. It's just kind of a yeah, we don't know what the hell to do with you, so you're just going to kind of be there. That's kind of bad, especially when those are the established authority figures and you bring in new ones who don't necessarily dethrone or otherwise kick out the established ones. It's like, well, what about these people?
Yep. I do think part of it maybe while I liked Brad Maddox, he wasn't getting much reaction from the crowd.
It's because they didn't use him right.
It's like Theodore Long's hardly gets a proper reaction from the crowd, which Booker T did, but he's Booker fucking T. Whereas it's like the other two didn't really get much of a reaction from the crowd, so they probably did that of just phase them out instead of firing them because they're like, well, the crowd don't care whatever happens to these people. Let's just phase them out and replace them with ones they care about.
Mm-hmm. But Brad Maddox is still kind of there, and he's still technically the general manager of Raw. It's just
you hardly see him.
Yeah, and they're basically burying him. And it's like, well, why even have him at that point? It would have worked much better if they just got rid of all the authority figures and said, we are the authority.
Yep.
Well, that was the point I made. That was the point I made earlier, is that they didn't go one way or the other. They kind of took over, but they didn't get rid of the authority figures, but they didn't push them either, and everything kind of languished. And it seemed like nobody. And then they added Kane to the mix.
We agreed.
And it just seemed like there was just too many authority figures. Nobody knew who the hell was in charge and what was going on, and it was a clusterfuck.
I know. I said we agreed. We were just continuing the discussion while we assumed your phone had rang before you went to your second point.
Yeah. So the other point I was going to make, I don't remember what the hell it was now. I forgot what the other point I was going to make now was, so never mind.
The other point was you were oddly turned on by Stephanie McMahon in like black leather boots and all black on Monday Night Raw, screaming out, "Destroy him!"
No.
Okay, just me.
She looked hot, just not the destroy him part.
Oh, come on. When she was screaming out, destroy him, maim him. Come on. That was kinky. That was hot. And I believe Marcus would agree with me.
No, brother.
No comment.
Whoa. Tiff's been possessed by Hulk Hogan. So, yeah. But overall, the authority stuff, like I said, it has its ups and its downs. We can weigh it up either way, if that makes sense. But did you want to take us out, Jim?
Sure, I think that's good. I'd like to thank everyone for joining me. Fallen Angel, Queen of Hearts, you guys, did you two want to say anything else about the Factions of Authority?
No, I'm good.
Alrighty. I'm not all that familiar, but seeing as we're trying to balance out here, Mole, since I know you watched it, or does anybody who has watched it want to mention any Factions of Authority in DNA?
Not really. I mentioned the part of the TNA Factions of Authority I enjoyed.
Okay.
I mean, there was ones in WCW as well, like the Millionaires Club and stuff. But
Yes.
it's like, we were more looking at the aspects and the individual groups.
Fair enough. All right, so with that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. Fallen Angel, Queen of Hearts, Chris the Mole, and Marcus Shadow.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I've been James Phoenix. This has been our little discussion on Factions of Authority. We'll see where the Authority goes after WrestleMania. Supposedly Vince McMahon will return, and we'll see how that plays out.
And I was just going to say to you, Jim, I'm sorry. I really, really don't like the way you hosted this. You're fired. Bye.